I want to talk a little bit about what happened this week in terms of Ebola, because a couple weeks ago you were like, we really got to pay attention to this, and the World Health Organization, according to their latest figures, and some people say these actually could be pretty conservative because a lot of the cases maybe aren't necessarily reported in the proper way, but there have been about 5,335 cases of Ebola, about 2,622 deaths. So that's basically half the people who have contracted it. It has been doubling every 3 weeks, these figures.
Right.
And this week, the U.S. government, when we talk about U.S. intervention, this is the kind of intervention I like to see, frankly. We're sending 3,000 troops. We're sending hospital beds. We're sending something like, 400,000 kits on how to deal with Ebola. In these places, they need it. In Liberia, they need like 1,200 beds. They only have 240. And this is a situation, this is very problematic because, if you don't have a place to put these people, it just continues they pass on the virus.
Right. Well, yeah, and to be clear, when I said that to you a couple of weeks ago that I wanted to talk about this, it was for what I saw a couple important reasons at the time. It seemed to me this issue was only being covered in two ways, which was ignored by most people, and then the conspiracy mongers and people who like getting headlines or whatever, like, oh my God, the whole world's going to die. And I thought talking about this in a rational way and saying, look, there is, and not freaking out, but saying, hey, this is serious and there is a problem here. And there are people, scientists saying, when we see a guy who gets on an airplane and ends up dying in the airport in Nigeria who was from Minnesota, that clearly this thing can travel now. It used to be rural, based in rural areas. Then it hadn't even hit Eastern Africa before, or it had been 30 or 40 years. And suddenly this thing was in cities and travel, and everything you're saying is right now. And look, right now Sierra Leone has just begun a 3-day lockdown where everybody's ordered into their homes. In Guinea, they just there was a mob that attacked 8 Americans, I think, Westerners certainly, and killed them. A group of journalists, a priest, I believe, and some aid workers because people are freaking out, and then the conspiracy theories start. They're purposely trying to kill us. And that's why you want to get on these things, and my condolences immediately to the families of those 8 people who were very courageous in being over there. But that's why you want to try to get on these things as soon as possible, And and there were broader issues too. One of them is that the healthcare infrastructure of the United States, if we're talking about it in a purely selfish way, has been ignored to the point of where we would be in much worse shape. We've allowed people who are the poorest of the poor in this country to be in much worse physical shape than let's say in most Western European countries. And that's how this thing ends up killing people. And then it spreads. And that was an important conversation to have, our lack of spending on infrastructure and prevention and treatment. And the fact that, there was no money really in a cure for this thing because people who are getting it are poor and the gestation period is such that people are dying very quickly, and you need a lot more people to get it and to hit wealthy countries before pharmaceutical companies would say, hey, there's some money in this. This is where you need government to step in, where there isn't that market incentive that nobody on the right since Reagan seems to understand. So these are all important. And I'll add one last thing to that that I don't think I thought about last time, which is, the United States could use a little good will around the world.
Right.
We're always ready to go in and bomb when it's ISIS. But these are the kinds of things that build up trust and friendship when you use softer power, if you want to call that, when you use diplomacy, when you use aid, when you use humanity to go in and help people before the kinds of situations that could develop, especially when a disease like this is breaking out and mass panic can break out.
And
so for all those reasons.
To add to that list of things, the U.S. drafted a resolution that was adopted at the Security Council I think it was yesterday, It establishes a United Nations mission for Ebola emergency response. It is basically going to build and maintain a platform in that region, and some mechanism essentially to be operational in responding to this crisis. And that's good for the United States. It's not like there's been this huge domestic outcry, but it's good that we're doing stuff like that, and for all the reasons that you mentioned, not the least of which it's a humane thing to do. And so, people should just keep in mind when we talk about U.S. intervention around the world, this is a component of it. It's probably the best component of it in some respects.